Welcome to South Asia Monitor's SAM conversation. I'm Tarun Basu, and I'll be speaking today with Sanjoy Hazarika, researcher, columnist, former reporter of the New York Times, recipient of the Rotary Prix Award for writing, who has been published extensively in Indian and international media, author of 6 books, and we'll be talking about his latest book, The River Traveler, and who's also best known, at least in the capital, as the authoritative voice of the Northeast. In fact, he's introduced mostly on television as an expert on Northeast. And I don't think there is another person so knowledgeable about the Northeast region as Sanjoy. So Sanjoy, congratulations on this, your latest piece of literature. And it's a fascinating read. And of course, as we start, the first question is, what made you write in this book, and how long has this been in conception? I mean, the river spans 3 countries, travels for 3,000 kilometers from the Tibetan plateau to the forested valley of Arunachal, down to Bangladesh, Sonar Bangla, down to the Bay of Bengal. It must have taken, it's a long journey. And what made you write it, and when did you start thinking about it?
Well, thanks, Tarun, old friend, for having me on this SAM Conversations. Well, I think the story of the river has always been within, because one of the first things I remember seeing as a child, sharpest memories as a child, I couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 at the time, is that going down to the river by the banks in Guwahati and watching dolphins dance in the river, which is, really magical. And that image has stayed with me for life. And it's very special to anybody who lives in Assam, in Arunachal, of course, and across the Northeast, perhaps less so across the Northeast. But it's been something that's been tugging at my heartstrings and my mind for a very long time. And I sort of reverse walked into it. I made a film. I made a film on the river first with Jahanu Barua, which went from Tibet to the Bay of Bengal, and followed up by a series for Doordarshan, a 6-episode series on Arunachal and Assam, because Doordarshan dur nahi dikhta hai. They look only within the borders of the country. And that provoked me, because all the stories we get, obviously you couldn't put in celluloid or in film. All the stories, we are essentially writers. All the stories we get need to share with a larger audience. And the only way I can do it is by writing about it. So it took a long time, but it also interrupted. I slowed down because in between my wife passed away, as you know. So that induced a kind of writer's block. And but apart from that, I just decided to keep going and push it. So yeah.
So it's been a long journey for the book, just like the river's journey. And as you said, it traverses 3 countries. And the rivers, I was fascinated as I went through the book on the changing face of the river. Would you like to talk a little bit about this changing face of the river from up in Tibetan tableland to Bangladesh, and when it enters the sea? How does it change? And why also the question that struck me? I mean, India, after all, has about 400 rivers. What's so special about the Brahmaputra for those who are not so familiar with not just the river, but that region?
Well, let's start with the second question first. What's so special about the Brahmaputra? For once, it is, at least in Hindu mythology, a male river. Not that I'm gender prejudiced, that it's quote spoken of as a male river. Secondly, the scale of the river is gigantic. It is huge. I mean, I remember being both in Dibrugarh where I've been many times, and in at Meghna Mukh, where the Meghna River joins what is the Podda, which is actually a combination of the Ganga and the Brahmaputra. You cannot see the other side and in monsoon. So one is the scale. It's like an epic film. It's an epic scale of a river. And
Sorry to interrupt. At
it
its
is
widest, how much is it? At its widest?
22 kilometers.
Oh, okay.
So you can't see the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it is joined by 50 rivers, which become 5,000 during the monsoon because streams become rivers, brooks become streams. All these join this. And it is produces the largest volume carries the greatest volume of water and silt in South Asia. All the rivers of South Asia together do not carry this much water as does the Brahmaputra, uh, fueled by many tributaries. And of course, you have to take the Indus out of that calculation. How has the river changed? Um, Communities are changing, communities are adapting. There is this whole process of climate change, which is very visible. People are moving away, not as dependent on the river as they were because they don't know how the weather is going to be, whether the rains will come a month late or a month early. And so this is leading to a lot of out migration of many communities. But from Tibet to the Bay of Bengal, it is many communities. One river, I say, three countries, hundreds of communities. And every community has music, song, and stories of the river. So, in that way, the river connects people to each other, even if they don't know it. You know, Another way it's changing is the way engineers and politicians and bureaucrats are approaching it. For instance, there's this huge dam that the Chinese are building, the Medak Dam, on at the bend of the Sangpo. They claim that it will not affect downstream rivers like India and Bangladesh, but it's bound to because they're tunneling, making these huge tunnels which will take water away from the river. So even if our policymakers in Delhi say that, oh, the Chinese dam won't affect us, of course it will, because that particular stem of the river, the Sangku Siang stem, is about 8 to 10% of the flow. Now, 8 to 10% is not a small amount of water; it is a huge amount. I mean, you realize the scale when you go to a place like Arunachal. I was rafting down, did some river rafting once. I was coming down and I was looking up at the rocks, and you can see the water line is about 30 feet up.
Wow.
Where we were, the water goes to that scale, 10 meters higher in monsoon than where we are. Now you drop that water level, it impacts everything: people, housing, livelihoods, river populations, fish, dolphins, everything, because dams do one thing: they clean the river of nutrients, sand and everything else. So what goes into the hydropower dam, the turbines, emerges as a cleaner, more clinical water, which does not really benefit lives and livelihoods downstream.
Sanjay, before we come to what man is doing to the river, not just the Chinese, but it's happening all around the course of the river. The river is known by different names in different places, starting with Sangpo in Tibet. And then I think it becomes the Padma or the Ganga in Bangladesh. What are the different names of the river? That is something that I found fascinating. And also the songs around the river. That also, if we talk about, especially when you talk about Bhupen Hazarika, the inimitable Bhupen Hazarika, and how he is called the Bard of Brahmaputra. So would you like to something talk about the names, various names and the songs around the river?
Yeah, the names are Yarlung Sangpo in Tibet, then it's the Siang in Arunachal. Although the Lohit, which is a separate river, is also known as the Red River, is also sometimes people associate that with the Brahmaputra, although it's a tributary. Then comes the Brahmaputra. Then it becomes the Jamuna in Bangladesh. But there's also a smaller stream called the Old Brahmaputra. And then when the Potto and the Brahmaputra meet, the Ganges and at Arichar Ghat, it becomes the Potto. So flowing
So the
into
Jamuna
the
becomes the Padma then. Padda, what as though called the Padda.
the Ganga and the Brahmaputra, when they join, that is the
Okay,
main
okay.
influence of
All
the
right.
Padda.
Okay, okay, okay. And now
And
let's
as
talk something
far
about
as
the songs.
music and
Music.
songs, I mean, if you anybody listens to Bhupen Hazarika's music, it has a very folklorish tinge to it, because he built his entire repertoire or large part of the repertoire on the music of local communities, whether it was the Bhatiali, whether it is the Gwalparia, whether it's the Mishing, whether it is other tribal communities. He would pick their music, he would take their stories and put it into song. And of course, his greatest songs are about the river itself, how it flows. There's one in Bangla about the Ganga, which is actually
Yeah, yeah.
transliteration from the Brahmaputra. But there are many other singers and writers, poets who have waxed eloquent about the Brahmaputra. Mine is just one more addition to that list. But the thing is that uh, it is the music of the river which is heard in its entirety when you sit by the bank and listen to it. Because the flow is such, especially in the monsoon, it's like a roaring tiger. So there are many moods to the river. In winter, it's like a grandfather, an elderly person in the autumn of their age. And then
Has
suddenly,
somebody, sorry,
monsoon
has
changes.
somebody recorded us music or song just on the many moods and the many sounds that emanate from the river in different seasons? Has there been any such attempt? Just curious about that.
I'm sure people have recorded it. I mean, I've got recordings of
And
various of the Sanpo and the Brahmaputra and so on, but I don't think anybody is. I don't know of any combination or any effort to bring it all together as
okay,
one piece.
okay, okay. Okay, but I mean, you have an entire chapter on Bhupen Hazarika, and that's a fascinating reading. Also, now come to what we have talked about, and that for which you have known a lot about your boat clinics and how you started the boat clinic in Dibrugarh in 2004, and what made you start it. And I think from one boat in 2004, now there are about over 20 boats. Am I right, or even more?
16, 16,
Yeah. Could you
16.
talk something about how this whole boat clinic dream came to you and what made you start them and what are the present state? And you talk something about these hospitals also that you're doing along the river. So will you talk about that?
The idea of the boat race started in a tragedy. uh, we were filming the river and we were going in a ferry to Majuli, this great island in the heart of the river. And my director and I heard the story of a young woman who died in childbirth on that river, on that river, on that ferry. Uh, it was been coming and we were going the reverse direction, same boat. And I tried to find out a bit more, and it turned out it was a young woman with a difficult pregnancy, and she didn't survive the journey from her village to the boat and the ferry journey. And I then decided to check about maternal mortality in Assam, and I found at that time Assam had the worst maternal mortality ratio in India, which is that more women died in childbirth than in any other state. Not Bihar, not UP, not Madhya Pradesh, not Rajasthan, not the Bhimaro states, Assam. And I said it was unacceptable. I'm the child of a doctor, the son of a doctor. My grandfather, uncles, brother, we are all they're all doctors. So I did want to do something to take a position to do something to intervene so that it would help people. Now, but that's an idea. Um, how can you do anything to help people? Then I said it needs more research, and I found that the most marginalized and most vulnerable were the communities who lived on islands. Because
The
the
chars
islands,
are the char
the
saporis, right?
saporis, we call them
Yeah.
saporis also, so sandbanks, essentially sandbanks, deposits of sand, which have become islands with time, with vegetation grows, people settle, and so on. And they had something like
This is sorry.
uh,
This is from all the silt that you are talking about. That you talked about earlier.
the sediment that comes down from on
This
the
is
river.
it. Yeah.
The
Okay.
river
All
is a
right.
creator always of opportunities for people. We found that something like 8% or so of the population of the state lived on islands, which was very, very substantial. Now, after that, I said we need to link these two, and how do you get access to information, access to uh, these islands? How do you give them access to information? How do you give them access to services? Both. Then I realized that the only way you can do it is by boat. You can't build bridges everywhere. You can't take flights. You can't have flying doctors and all that. So the simple country boat, revised, rejigged, redesigned, with doctors on board, and becomes and a
But
nurses,
nobody had
pharmacy.
thought of this before. No one had thought of this before.
Well, I guess not.
Of
I think
course. Yeah.
what they did do was during emergencies like floods, they would take medicines or take health care to people. But that's not sustainable. You can't just do it once or twice in a year. So this is a sustained effort. So it's become part of the policy of the government of Assam, and now they have taken it almost like a government project. To me, it doesn't matter which government is in power as long as the service is being provided. And so that's how it started. Now we have 15 or 16 boat clinics. We reach about
And
two and a half to
serving
3 lakh,
approximately how many people?
2.5 to 3 lakh people every year.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So the focus is women and children, pregnant women, those who've delivered, and so on. But I think the main thing is that it's important to reach the people who are most vulnerable at this time.
And you are getting good support from the government from it.
The government has supported us for a very long time, since 2008. Initially on 5 and then scaling up. So without the government, you can't do this. So it's been going for nearly 21 years now.
Wow, that is
And
really commendable. That's so good to hear.
recognized
That's
by
so good to hear.
recognized by governments across in India, of course, but also across the world, and by
I wonder
international
why
institutions.
this model has not been replicated in other parts of the country.
I don't think in other parts of the country have many island populations.
Okay. All
This
right.
is not for people who live on the shore, because
Yeah, only
those who
for the
live on
people
the
on
shore
the
have access to
Saporis. All
hospitals.
right. Okay.
These
All
are
right.
for people who don't have access to any service.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
saw it as one way of dealing with several issues. The boat clinics could bring health, but because if you have health, then people can study, people can go to work, they can have better lives.
Okay.
Women can have
Okay.
leisure, they can
Okay.
increase livelihoods. So then we took, moringa, which is this plant which is very good, nutritious, especially for women and children. We took seeds of that and planted extensively.
That
We've taken
data, that what we
solar
call data.
data.
Mm, yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
all these, these are some services, add-ons, as it were, which we have been doing.
Okay, coming back to what you were talking earlier about what the dam that the Chinese are building on the Brahmaputra, and then you talk about the what happened in the Tista some years ago in 2023, and you're talking about this nature is retaliating against human blundering, and how the nexus of engineers, contractors, builders, businessmen, officers, and politicians doing to nature, not just to the river. And does anyone care or is it interested in learning? And how we ignore repeated lessons. Who is to blame for all these mounting casualties? And are any lessons being learned at all? Right, from the Tibet right to Bangladesh?
I don't think anybody is learning any lessons. They're just intent on human greed is a great, leaps across issues of common sense. And if you look at the entire range of disasters that has taken place from Kashmir all the way to Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh, parts of Assam, and so on, hill disasters, infrastructure, whether it's this Char Dham Rasta, I mean, there are constant collapses, but people will still keep building them because it has been so decreed and there is money to be made or whatever it is, and companies benefit from it. That's one. The second thing, it's not rocket science. Nature is telling you this is not on. You progress with this, you will face consequences. And we are seeing the consequences of that. Now, the consequences of this major dam on the Sangpo in Tibet by the Chinese, we are trying to respond to it by building more dams on our side. I mean, how brilliant is that? You already have a river that is being restricted. And I believe that rivers have a right to a free flow, at least a minimum flow should be assured. And you're doing the same thing on our side. How is that going to help? Because it impacts, subsequent communities downstream, all the way to Bangladesh. And Bangladesh has no control over the rivers that flow into it. As I say in the book, it's a land of rivers, and people live by the river. They don't find it a Ganashatru like many engineers and others seem to take.
Well, it's a book is not just about a river, it's a travelogue. As you read the book, you feel you are actually going along the river right from the source right down to the sea. And it's a tapestry of not just the environment, but also the people and the communities. And it's a lovely reading. And I'm just great having this conversation with you. And I can't just help end this without reading from the last part of your book. I remember standing at the foot of the Tibetan ravine as the Sangpo searched by me and feeling a sense of the same wonder at the power of nature to sustain itself despite the worst efforts by humans to harm it. That more or less sums up the story of the river and what made you write it. And again, I mean, this is,
Yeah,
I,
I must say one thing, Tarun. The river is older than the Himalaya. It will outlive everybody, it will outlive us all. Even those who are trying to quote, tame it and harness it. It will be there in a
that's what
different
Bhupen
shape.
Hazarika, whom you quote, the eternal balladeer, spoke about and sang. O mighty Brahmaputra, Brahmaputra of many arms, the abode of many a confluence, for millennia it has illumined to mankind the true import of assimilation. So, Sanjay, before we conclude this conversation, we have to talk about the pirates. The pirates on the river, your near experience with it. One knows about the pirates of the Caribbean, and one has read about the exploits of the Somali pirates in the Gulf of Eden and the Indian Ocean. But pirates on the river, on the Brahmaputra, that is something one has not heard. And so, I mean, pirates in South Asia in our neighborhood. And this is what I remember from your book. It is at the confluence of the three rivers, the Meghna, the Ganga, and the Brahmaputra, as they entered the Bay of Bengal, and you were caught somewhere in the inland sea. So tell us something about it.
Well, actually, it wasn't on the river. It was in the Bay of Bengal. What happened was the pirates run a parallel economy. In terms of they extort from the fisher people. Everybody pays the kind of tax to them, and so on. Anyway, so that's a kind of parallel economy which has gone on for a long time. And what we didn't know anything about it. So what happened was we were going out to sea, out to the Bay of Bengal to basically shoot the last scene of the film, what was to be the last scene of the film. And there was going to be a Bhatiyali song with the Bangladeshi singers, and we'd catch the setting sun, beautiful sunset. All that worked out, but when I looked around and all I could see was water. There was no sign of land. And there had been land an hour or so earlier, one of the sites. So I asked the captain what happened. He says, the director said I should cut the engine. So I cut the engine because it was making sound. So the current of the Brahmaputra and the Podda has taken us into the Bay of Bengal. So I said, well, how long will it take us to get back near shore? Not even to shore, but near. He said it will take 2 to 3 hours. And sunset is happening, it's getting dark, it's looking beautiful, but darkness at sea in a small vessel is not a very comfortable thought. And I don't swim, so not that swimming would have done much good.
You were miles
So
away from shore.
suddenly, huh?
And you were
I
miles
don't
and
know.
miles away from shore.
Yeah, it's long way, and he could only give me the distance in terms of time.
Mm.
Uh, and suddenly there was this commotion, and we were being told to hide our equipment, move the stuff down to the below deck, and so on. So I was very curious, wondering why people were so upset and so on, the crew members. So I asked one of our team members from Bangladesh, and he said, we are being chased by pirates. So I said, you've got to be kidding, pirates in this day and age. What sort of thing is this? So then the captain of the ship, the vessel, pointed out three large vessels that were coming towards us from three sides.
And they were
He says,
narrowing down on you.
yeah, coming down on me. They're not very far away. And they were flashing lights to each other, which was a kind of signaling us how to approach. Now, our boat vessel was much smaller. So I just asked, what do they do if they capture a vessel? He said, first they kill everybody on board, then they loot everything, and then they scuttle the ship. I said,
Not
and
very comforting thoughts.
I exactly what I told Janu Bodu. I said, will be a page one paragraph item in the Times of India tomorrow maybe. So, and anyway, then uh, the captain of the ship said, I have a strategy. The strategy was to, because it's a smaller boat, it could go towards the shallower area. Because by that time, land had come visible. So he moved towards the bank, the shore. And the bigger boats could not come. Anyway, to read the rest of the story, people will have to
Yeah,
read
but a
the
little
book,
bit,
at least buy it.
what was interesting and little intriguing also, they were really fish pirates in some ways. They were they largely what they go for is the hilsa fish, which is
No,
during
no,
at least in the
they
sea.
don't go for the hits. They control the rights to fishing.
Oh, okay.
So if you pay a tax to them, this was some years ago. If you pay a tax to them, then you're okay. Otherwise, they'll pick you up and hold you for ransom.
Okay. Okay.
The fisher people. So that's a separate kind of economy there. Not just the fish, but other stuff, trading.
Yeah, but yeah, that's an interesting chapter. Definitely, people should read that. Okay, before we conclude, I'd definitely like you to read a few paragraphs of from the book. But what I found very interesting almost in the last chapters was your tribute to the river. And you're talking about how you acknowledge the infirmity and have not shown arrogance in trying to overcome and conquer nature. And that's why possibly the river was kind to you. And that because you also acknowledge the power and grace of the river, and then the process becoming a more sensitive, sentient being. So there are nice lines in the end. Would you like to read a few lines or a few paragraphs?
Well, I have my own favorite section. That is one of my favorite sections, but there's a separate part. I'll read two if I can. Then you take your choice what you want to run. This is towards the beginning, actually. One evening, I sat on the top deck of a boat at the edge of the large river island of Majuli in the heart of the Brahmaputra. Remembering times past, of life with my late wife Minal and her loss after wrenching and brutal illness, of our daughter Meghna and our future, of loves lost, past and present, of fear, anger, and the madness of city life in Delhi and Guwahati, the pressure of work. I smiled at the boatman. The boatman had come up to me and said, "Would you like to? Would like some water? Would you like to join the group on the sandbank?" I smiled at him and declined the invitation. I needed time to myself. I wanted to see the stars. He nodded and went away, probably thinking I was not quite all right. I listened over water. Birds chased each other over a vast riverscape, trilling as they went by sandbanks of forgotten floods. Why ponder so much, heavily and deeply, I thought. Just soak it in and enjoy the stillness of it all. I was home again, at my favorite place, the river. Here peace was at hand, and the vileness of man had not, at least seemingly at that time, damaged that visible world. Towards the end, every journey has a beginning, every story has a pre story, every ending has a sequel. This braided and unquiet river, Asia's most magnificent in my view, though neither its longest nor greatest, flows a long way to the end of all our stories, to the sea. Bhupen Hazarika, eternal ballad of the Brahmaputra, sang, O mighty Brahmaputra, Brahmaputra of many arms, the abode of many a confluence. For millennia, it has illumined to mankind the true civilization. Traversed, shared my secrets with it, and laid my fears and troubles to rest there. It too has spoken to me and has been kind and generous in the midst of its vastness and power to someone who could not swim. It has taken me on many adventures, brought love into my life, taught me humility, the importance of valuing beauty and the interwoven tapestry of nature. That interconnectedness lies even in a grain of sand. Above all, the Brahmaputra has sheltered me and kept me safe. For me, that is enough.
Those are beautiful lines, and especially one about your late wife and your daughter, a lovely daughter, which brings back a lot of memories in me also and my family, because we go back decades. So nice to have you in this show, and also brings back memories of what we read in school about those lines from Alfred Tennyson on the brook. Men may come and men may go, but I go on forever. So that was about the brook, but this could well be said of the Brahmaputra, an allegory on the fleeting, transient nature of human life in comparison with the eternal, enduring flow of nature. That's a lovely tribute to the Brahmaputra, Sanjay. And so I had enjoyed reading it, and I hope a lot of people read it and not just read it as a travelogue, but learn a lot of lessons on how to live in harmony with nature. Thank you for being in this conversation with South Asia Monitor.
Thank you. Thank you.